Oh, damn it. I was going to bring you jelly donuts.
Of course. Did you test that line? Did you make sure that was what you opened with?
I'm Arizona Family political editor Dennis Welch.
Dennis, fake news Welch. Try to tell the truth.
And this is the Politics Unplugged podcast.
Dennis, if you have a problem with substance abuse, I am more than willing to talk to you anytime you need.
All right, welcome back to the Politics Unplugged podcast. And this week, I am very happy to be joined by Mr. J.P. Twist, political extraordinaire.
It's me.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Thank you for joining us. I mean, you know, in this week, we wanted to focus on, gubernatorial politics. I know we just got through the 2024 election, and as we're taping right now, the election results still haven't been officially certified or canvassed, but people are already lining up to try to challenge the governor or make noise that they want to challenge the governor. So I thought I'd bring someone like JP on, who's been, a veteran of these types of political wars and has succeeded a couple of times. You were the worked on the Ducey campaigns. You saw him get elected. You saw him get reelected by pretty comfortable margins. So welcome, JP.
Yeah, it's good to be here, man. You're sort of the quintessential political reporter hack that we're like 20 days outside of an election. You want to start talking about the next one. You know, it's operatives. Like,
I don't want to talk about the next one,
dude.
Dude, these politicians want to talk about the next one.
It's like, oh, ready, on to the next one. It's like, shit, man. We need to take some sleep.
I'm not happy about it either.
Yeah.
But like everybody seems. I mean, again, speaking of Colin, I had to check to make sure he wasn't running for governor.
Well, he still may. He's got time to figure it out.
I have questions whether he can raise the money needed.
I've been approached.
Well, if you're looking for an old, washed-up political hack, I'm happy to manage your campaign.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, so let's start. Let's start with the political realities of Katie Hobbs.
Mm-hmm.
Democrats that I talk to are just convinced she's safe from a primary challenge. She's got $3 million in the bank. Nobody's going to challenge her in the primary. Like, it's a convincing argument. I'm not 100% convinced about that. I think Lori Roberts in a recent column wrote it up pretty succinctly and accurately that Katie Hobbs, won the election a couple of years ago, not because she's Katie Hobbs, but because she wasn't Carrie Lake. So let's sum up the political realities of where Hobbs is right now. She won a very narrow margin a couple of years ago. And over the last 2 years, some of the campaign promises she made, she hasn't been able to follow up on. Chief among them was the ESA school voucher program. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering, where is she politically right now as she starts gearing up for reelection?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a question we're all kind of asking ourselves. And I think, I probably put myself, I mean, we'll deconstruct this in a second, but I probably put myself in the camp that, there's a lot of posturing right now, but at the end of the day, are some of these people really going to challenge the incumbent Democrat, governor of their own party?
Well, that takes some balls.
It's a big deal. There's a lot of risk. There's a lot of political risk in it too. If you lose, So if you're going to go after the king, you better make sure that you win. And I think, she's got time to kind of right the ship a little bit. Although I think your point is right. Like, it seems from our perspective, and maybe this is just colored by my Republican lens, but it seems as though a lot of the things that she's done, you mentioned ESAs, a lot of these, like, it's almost like there is a lack of strategy that kind of comes out of the governor's office. And I think that's probably primarily driven by her. I mean, think of the border, for example, right? So she started out the campaign in 22. Talking about getting rid of a bunch of border stuff, getting rid of the border strike force. And then at the end of the campaign, if you remember, she was running ads saying that she was going to be tough on the border. She gets into office. What's one of the first things she does? She gets rid of the border strike force that Governor Ducey founded.
I thought she just kind of rebranded, and I've always wanted to do a little more reporting on that, because a lot of the things that the border strike force did that Ducey funded is stuff that Katie Hobbs is doing now.
Well, I
Just
think
that
that's-
she's
I think
not
that's sort of
calling
my
it the border.
point.
She's not calling it the border strike force.
Yeah, I mean, I think her line was, "It's not on the border and it doesn't strike," which was, probably a good tested line. But the fact is, it interdicted thousands and thousands of pounds of drugs and money and guns and did a whole bunch of stuff. But I think that's just sort of emphasizes the point that it's sort of a strategy adrift. It's and now she's on Fox. Now she's out there saying she's not going to cooperate with Trump on the border issue, but that the reason is because we need more money and funding on the border to focus on border crime. So it seems like a lot of these things where she's trying to have her cake and eat it too, and it just seems like it's a strategy that's sort of rudderless. That she hasn't sort of picked a side. You and I were talking before we started a little bit about she seems to have a lot of her messaging around why I want to work with the other side or different things, and I just think that so much of the manifestation of that we see on the outside is just kind of this back and forth, this flip flop or ping ponging, that there's actually no real narrative or strategy that they're trying to drive. I just think that I think probably for her, they don't really know how to navigate kind of politics as well as I think Ducey did. I think you would even admit that I think Ducey did a pretty darn good job.
You can't argue with the results.
Yeah.
I mean, Ducey didn't have, to be fair, the most dynamic challengers.
Well,
Fred Duvall, who ended up being a political ally of Doug Ducey, which was
and that's somebody that I've really enjoyed getting to know over the years.
And then Garcia, who he ran a pretty. And I like Mr. Garcia. I like David Garcia, but it was on a personal level, a pretty feckless campaign.
Yeah, Chris Christie likes to tell this story. He was at a new governor's school. So obviously I worked for the Republican Governors Association for 4 years, and we always do whenever there's a new governor or new governors that get elected. So governor elects, there's always kind of a govs elect only meeting, and the chairman will come in and just kind of talk. And he started out this one particular meeting. He said, "Does any of you know why I won re-election by as much as I did? Anybody want to take a guess?" And somebody raised their hand and says, "Well, because you took on the teachers union." It's like, "No, that's not it." It's like, "Well, because you tell it like it is." "No, that's not it." "Oh, it's because you went into rooms and nobody went in there." And he was like, "No." He's like, "I won because I got a shitty opponent." And he said, "That's your job over the next 4 years, is to make sure that you do good enough that nobody credible wants to run against you." No, and I was just say that David Garcia is a shitty opponent. That's inappropriate. But I think the point is, if you do the job really well and you go through the fundamental mechanics of what you need to do politically, not only to policy what you want to accomplish, but there's also this kind of political piece. Are you building your capital? Are you doing the things that you're going to need to convert into a successful re-election campaign? And that's sort of the point that he was making. And you see Katie Hobbs, members of her own party are now talking about challenging her. The Arizona Republic has beaten the crap out of her.
No.
That's where you got to be nervous, where you might actually get a credible opponent.
Well, let me ask you then, because obviously you've got deep ties with the Republican Party, kind of reverse engineer this, looking at this. What would you, as a Republican, what would be, frustrating for you to see if Katie Hobbs do? What would she need to do to make you concerned as a Republican that she might be hard to defeat? What could she start doing right now to shore herself up?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. Is she capable of doing these things? That's I don't know the answer.
It's always the question.
It's always the question.
I mean, she started. I mean, it was less than 2 weeks after the election. She started. It was an official gubernatorial stop, but she's down at the border.
Yeah,
down at the ports of entry.
Well, I do think that if she, I think that opposing the deportation stuff, that I think clearly a vast majority of Americans are looking for certainly a shift in this policy. We see it through our organization. A whole number of people that we've talked to over the last 2 years, like a lot of disengaged folks, people on the kind of lower economic scale. They look at it's the stuff you've talked about. I mean, they look at free plane rides, free phones, hotels. Meanwhile, they feel like, hey, I'm working 2 jobs. I'm getting creamed out here in this economy. And, all these people are getting this free stuff. You see cities cutting services, and it really upsets people. So I think if I were her, I would continue to try to lean in harder on being more of a border hawk, because I think you've covered Arizona politics for a long time. I mean, it's essentially been the #1 issue since 2014 or 2010, really. Yeah. And it will continue to be until we have some sort of meaningful, shift in.
And I've only seen it really be so decisive in 2 cycles, like this past cycle we're coming out of, because of those numbers of people coming across the border, abusing that asylum policy and whatnot. And then you got to go back to the early 2000s.
Well, I mean, it dominated in 18 and 14. 18, we ran a whole bunch of ads on the border. We talked about the Border Strike Force and a handful of things. And in 14, we did the same thing as well. Because if you remember, education was kind of always the #1 issue.
That was Ducey's his biggest weak spot was education, and you guys navigated that pretty well.
Yeah, I think we did. I think it's interesting as he's come out of it. Obviously, this is through the conservative lens, but Ducey is sort of considered, because of the universal school choice and a lot of the different things that he did in education, he's sort of considered like the gold standard in Republican politics.
Was Red for Ed before or after his reelection?
No, it was before. It was like during.
Yeah, I was just like,
it was like during.
How the hell did he escape that? Oh, wait, yeah, he was running against David Garcia.
Well, it's funny, so David Garcia was the education candidate, right? And I don't know, do you remember the Ted Simon debate that was meant to be like an education debate? I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah,
this is the one where he didn't have any plan whatsoever. It was like he was trying to get something on the ballot, and then they didn't get the signatures, and when Ducey pressured him, I mean, he was supposed to be the education candidate and the answer, and it ended up not being the case. I think part of that was bad strategy on his part. I think there's a lot of times when there's a candidate, you think like, I know I know so much about this, I don't need to prep. Yeah. And Doug Ducey preps.
Yeah. But now it's like, I was always like, how the hell? He had 72,000 teachers marching on the Capitol. Anyway, we're not going down memory lane here. I just wanted to move forward.
Well, so I think immigration is good. I think immigration would be smart, because it's going to continue to dominate the news, and I think showing that she can buck her party and stand up for communities, because part of the reason that we talked about in 18, part of the reason I think we grew the governor's grew his margin in 18 from 14. Is a large part because we talked about, if you remember, the theme for our campaign was securing Arizona's future, and we talked a lot about, if you're a mom or a dad thinking about like, what do you want out of kind of your community, out of your state? Like, you want your kid to be able to walk to school and be safe. When they get to school, they get a great education. When they graduate, they can get a great job. And it resonated with people across party lines, particularly independents. Because everybody wants to live in a safe community. And if you live here, you see these stories. I mean, we just went through, I know it was in Georgia, we just went through the Lake and Riley stuff. Like, it's present. It's like people feel this, and they particularly feel it in a border state. So I think leaning in on that would be smart. And I also think you and I talked a little bit, not to give her, I don't really want to give her advice, but, governors.
I can see it pains you. It's like physically, this is paining you. So please. Please
well,
continue.
They probably think I'm an idiot anyway, so they wouldn't follow it. But what you've seen incumbent Democrat governors do very well, and Republicans to some degree, but let's just talk about Democrats for a second around the country, is use the legislature as a foil, right? So I am here, and if it's not for me, if we elect a Republican or whatever, these guys are going to go, nuts. All these crazy things are going to happen. So I'm standing in the way. I'm a reasonable person. And I'm going to make sure that these, crazy people in the legislature, don't go wild. I think that's a compelling message. I think she started a little bit kind of out of the gate doing that, but I think we've seen a lot of that move off. And, part of that might be just the nature of her building relationships with folks. I mean, obviously she's been, they got a budget pass and a handful of things, which, I budget was the first one was terrible, but I think I just think that like those kind of two things jump out at me.
But what and you'd mentioned members of her own party. Look, it's Adrian Fontes was the one who had said that he's been
but Chris
approached.
Mays has been. I mean, we know that Chris and her team have been looking at it too. They're just not as public about it.
Well, Chris has publicly said she's happy with the job she has, completely planning on running for re-election.
Oh yeah,
It's
that
all
sounds like a
convincing.
truthful.
It's
yeah.
all convincing
We've never
to
heard
me.
a politician say that before.
I'm not feeling a draft. But like Adrian Fontes, let's say he has said he's been approached, blah blah blah. What would it take for him to get himself in position to get a seat at the table to be a serious challenger to an incumbent governor? Political sides aside, Republican, Democrat, aside, you mentioned it's very risky. It's a big haul to challenge an incumbent governor. What would it take for someone like Fontes to challenge the incumbent governor in the primary?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge task. I mean, if you really think about it, I mean, so what do you need? You need
She's
got
got
money.
She's got $3 million.
Yeah, which is not nothing. She's going to need a lot more than that in Arizona. Phoenix is one of the most expensive DMAs in the country.
Especially when you look at what Karen Taylor Robson spent in the last one.
Yeah.
Anyway, but we'll talk about that in a minute.
So you need a handful of things, right? So you need money, which is the most important thing, because without money, you can't talk to people, and you can't talk to people, you're not going to win a race. And campaigns have just gotten so expensive. I mean, it's just like 10x every cycle, it seems like. And it's become harder and harder to reach people.
Yeah.
So you need money. So where does he go for money? There's certainly, I don't think anybody in the business community who's going to have the guts to start cutting checks against the incumbent governor. That's, if you think about kind of, the profiles of courage in some of these larger corporations, that's just not how it works. And now, okay, so
yes, they are risk adverse.
yes. Okay, so small dollar, you're going to go to that. Well, he just doesn't really have that profile.
You need like a big progressive sugar daddy.
Yeah.
Political sugar daddy, sugar mama to come in
and I just
and
don't
drop a boatload of money
I don't see that
on you,
happen.
right?
And also, like, Dennis, like, what? Okay, so she seems weak, right? She's routinely rated as, Martin Consul is one of the least popular governors. Okay, fine. But like, maybe I'll ask you a question. Like, what do you think what is it that you think Democrats see as blood in the water with respect to her? Like is there a progressive thing that she hasn't done, or like not enough? What's the reason?
I think you look at like ESA is
not enough.
Not enough
on
on that.
Yeah.
She will say, "Well, I got some guardrails put on that." It's like you promised to get rid of it, and instead of getting rid of it, it's here to stay forever. The program is growing. It is, since it's growing, you could make the argument it's popular, and you can't take it away now. It's like Obamacare. Once that became a thing, it gets really hard to take that away from people.
Yeah, well, there's a constituency built in now that is relying on it.
I think blood in the water right now. We're coming out of an election where we saw Republicans lose seat in the legislature.
Yeah.
Governor Hobbs had vowed, I'm flipping the legislature. She didn't.
Didn't she also promise that she was going to spend $30 million? Wasn't that a number that they were going to raise and spend $30 million? Isn't that what her political team was saying?
She had mentioned $500,000 to flip the legislature.
That's like one district. I mean, that's not very much money.
You talk about the money. I mean, these legislative races are just mind blowing.
It's crazy. Some other states, I mean, it's crazy how much, if you think about like Matt Gress's district, LD4, and a handful of other things, there are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. But
by the way, a political tip of the hat for Matt Gress. He was on the endangered Republican species list going into the year.
Nobody works harder than that dude. That guy, I think he might have knocked on every single door in the district.
Yeah, he was considered gone. And like nobody liked him at the legislature. He was the unpopular kid at the legislature. But we're digressing. But like, yeah, I think just coming out of this fresh election cycle, like I think people look at that as a big political hit to her.
Yeah, but I don't see that as like, okay, so all right, so she didn't move the needle enough on ESAs. Yeah. Fine. Is that enough for Democrat like primary voters to say yes? Okay, let's fire the incumbent governor. I don't see. There's no I don't think there's any clear thing that Adrian or Chris Mays or any of these people could really log on to. But we'll see. A lot of this is environmental. I mean, we'll see how things continue to play out.
If Democrat primary voters, if they want someone that's going to stand up to Donald Trump and the administration, are you looking at someone like Katie Hobbs?
Well, I think that goes back to kind of our earlier conversation around the border, right? Like she's trying to do both. She's trying to be a border hawk, kind of, but then also saying she's not going to, support any deportation operations. Yeah. So you can't have your cake and eat it too. You gotta choose a path, and I think voters really see through that stuff. So, so I don't know. I mean,
because you get these different messages, you got different styles, right? Like this political style. You got.
Well, I think voters generally want somebody who is going to stand up to the man, who's going to fight, who's a fighter, who can communicate well. And a lot of those things, just I think we can all admit, just Katie doesn't really have those.
And that's fine. But you look at the messages being sent. You've got Adrian Fontes, former Marine, see the hill, take the hill. And then you got Chris Mays, who's perfectly happy in her job right now, but she's also telling the Trump administration, anything you want to get done, you got to come through me first. And then you got Katie Hobbs saying, I want to work with the incoming administration. I'll draw a line in the sand with some of the deportation stuff, but I want to work with them.
Yeah.
Primary voters are different than general election voters and different than, and she's got to navigate that.
Yeah, I think that's and I think that's probably why you see Mays and Adrian doing those type of things because
they can.
It fires people up. Yeah. And certainly in the AG, I mean, let's not say that being AG is the same as being governor. It's a totally different issue set that you have to deal with, and the AG can throw bombs a lot more than the governor can.
Hobbs can read election results, and she's got to govern for the whole state. And a majority of her state voted for the border hawks, Donald Trump, and they voted for a get tough measure on the ballot. The numbers are escaping me. The Secure the Border Act.
Yeah,
she can read those results. It doesn't take much to read those things and start crafting a message on that. So I think obviously she wants to represent the state. She's going to have to get a little bit tougher on border stuff.
Yeah, I think ultimately my guess is that nobody ends up challenging her. Nobody credible. I think they just kind of stay in. I think they posture a little bit, get talked about, all that good stuff, and set themselves up for 2030. Even if Adrian did run, I mean, I still think that Katie would likely win that. It's very, very hard to take
that money is a significant, unless she can find or somebody can find some funding source that can just drop a money bomb on you and move forward.
Yeah, but in 26, I mean, who knows if there's some progressive donor that wants to pick a fight with an incumbent Dem governor. But, there's like a whole bunch of gubernatorial races that are up in 2026. And you think about the total available dollars of, where to spend. There's a handful of open seats that are in Republican hands today that, you're probably going to see there's a better ROI on an investment in those races than trying to take out an incumbent. But I think but I think she's gonna have a problem in the general election unless she kind of she just can't keep doing this. Trying to do both.
Well, let's talk about the general election and get back into your wheelhouse. There, Republicans. Obviously, the odds-on favorite right now, Karen Taylor Robson, has access to an enormous amount of money. I think she spent close to $20 million in a failed effort to get out of the primary 2 years ago. She's all but in. But I want to start with this because Carrie Lake has run 2 statewide campaigns. She's lost 2 statewide campaigns. Is she still a possibility for 2026 to run for governor? Could she get out of another primary, or primary voters in Arizona saying it's time to move on?
Yeah, that's kind of the big question that we're all asking ourselves. Does she want to just kind of continue this course that she's been on? And I don't know if anybody has an answer to that. I think it's unlikely that she's going to go into the administration because I think she would have wanted kind of a more high-profile job, and I don't think that's going to happen.
Maybe she could be AG.
Yeah, maybe. Well, it sounds like it's going to be Pam Bondi. I've heard rumors lately that she's looking hard at running for state chair of the GOP.
That's a terrible job.
Oh, it's like the worst job that you could think
It's
of.
the worst job.
Just ask Jeff DeWitt.
Yeah. Just ask any former chair. They will tell you it's terrible. Nobody likes you.
Nobody likes you. You got to put out fires. But I don't see her leaving Arizona. I don't know what she's going to do, but I wouldn't be surprised if she run. But we've also heard, Charlie Kirk being talked about.
Charlie Kirk.
And both of them wouldn't run. So there would have to be some sort of deal or decision made. My guess is
Lieutenant
that
governors,
she would.
that brings lieutenant governor into play because this will be the first election.
Yeah, I don't think Charlie would do lieutenant. Who knows? Who knows? But that's the big question we'll ask ourselves: is Lake gonna want to run for governor again? And nobody knows but her.
Yeah.
And I think she probably doesn't know yet, but she's probably going to look hard at it. And then you got Karen Taylor, you got Mayor Peoria, Jason Beck, who's been looking at it. He's a solid dude. I'm sure we'll have a couple legislators. Hoffman's talked about it, but if Lake is in or Charlie's in, obviously he wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
There's a guy, Tom Hatton. I don't know if you've talked to him. He's thinking Mountain Sound Fitness.
Yeah.
He was looking at it a couple years ago, or a few years ago, a couple years ago.
Another self-funder.
Yeah, exactly. And you've seen him get his, dipping his toes more into politics around the state. So I know he's kind of looking at it. But defeating an incumbent governor is the hardest thing to do in American politics next to getting elected president. Governors have a higher retention rate than U.S. senators and congressmen. It's a very, very, very difficult thing to do. And also, on top of that, the historical fact that midterm elections for an incumbent party typically are terrible for the incumbent party.
I was going to say that because in 2 years, too, we're talking now, we know that the political environment could be completely flipped on its head in 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a week is a lifetime in politics. 2 years is a generation.
Yeah, because normally in normal, look, I understand that Donald Trump just the political laws of physics don't necessarily apply to him.
No, they definitely don't.
But typically, administrations come in at a high mark, barring some punctuated event like a war or something like that.
Which is what the last time it didn't happen was 2002.
Yeah,
post 9/11.
Yeah, you come in and basically it's a high mark, and then as you see a gradual erosion, over the next 4 years or the next 2 years, and then they become convenient foils for governors, particularly governors from the opposite party, and that could very much benefit Katie Hobbs in a general election.
Very much so. Very much so. I mean, you have to if you just looking out 2 years, all we can really rely on is just historical norms, and historical norms say she's in a better position 2 years from now than probably most people think she is. It's going to be a hard thing to do, and so I think there are a handful of people. And like Adrian Fontes or some others who, like I said, maybe just hey, I'm going to wait this out until 2030. But
for Adrian's and Chris Mays and all of them, it's nice to get your name out there.
Yeah, no, it's politics. You got to do that. You got to be talked about. If you're not being talked about, what's the point? Yeah, exactly.
I feel a draft, people.
So, and then the other thing too, governors races are just the best races because they're just so different than any others. Like if you're running for U.S. Senate in Arizona or in New Jersey or Congress in Arizona 2 or Florida 3, the issue set is pretty much the same. I mean, you could probably take the stump speech from all 4 of those and interswap
and they're all nationalized.
They're all nationalized. I mean, what people really care about is who you're going to vote for speaker, just a handful of these things. Outside of that, you don't really have a lot of influence. But, governor's races are, you actually have to have a plan. You have to talk about solving problems. You're going to see people more often.
There's real policy debates.
There's real policy debates. And also you have particularly in a state like Arizona where the capital is in the major media market, there's a whole press corps that follows the governor around and they do gaggles and all this stuff. And that senators and congressmen don't have that. So if you're a challenger,
no, they've just got Manu Raja from fucking CNN.
Let me get you in the elevator here. Yeah, exactly. But if you're an incumbent, it's a really potent tactic that you can use on your point. Not to say that you can be manipulated in any way. I'm not saying that. Of course not. But when, you guys will write, when you guys will do a story on just about anything the governor does, it's just a lot easier to make news, and it's a lot harder for a challenger to do so. And particularly, we have late primaries and all these other things that are really just kind of incumbent protection. There's a lot of just things that stack up on top of the environmental political stuff that just make it pretty difficult.
And you saw that. I mean, again, like I said, one of her first public appearances since the election was she went down to Nogales, stood in front of the border, and said, "Look how good we're doing at this stuff. Look at my border plan. It's getting drugs and guns in all this other kinds of." And she can do a lot of that.
And if she's smart, I think she'll continue to do it. And do it often and report to people on what she's doing about it.
And that's what happens, right? Yeah, I mean, when Doug Ducey held a press conference down at the border, I had to go down to the damn border.
Yeah, exactly. And we knew it, which is why we did a lot of press conferences.
But as far as the Republican side, though, I mean, it seems like just from the money side, maybe from name recognition too, Karen Taylor Robeson being the catbird seat in the driver's seat.
I mean, she's the 800-pound gorilla, I think, right now. It depends on, what is kind of the status of the Republican primary. Is it, are we still gonna go for the kind of Carrie Lakes, the hard MAGAs? Probably. I think that's true. So that's something she's got to consider. The Trump endorsement is probably super important for
that's the other thing. I mean,
like, primary.
Could she lock up that endorsement, or is there somebody else out there that could?
There's no reason she can't. I mean, she's been a supporter. Her and her husband have been bundlers for the president. I think it's absolutely in play, and we know that the president, more so than just about anything, hears about winning.
Because we do know, again, that endorsement is worth more than $20 million, and I say that point specifically because that's exactly what Karen Taylor Robeson spent, I think, around that in her failed primary.
Yeah,
Carrie Lake had the endorsement,
and she also had, there's a long history. I like to tell people when I, meet with candidates, every candidate that you meet, they all want to run for the top job. They all want to run for Senate. They all want to run for governor.
Doug Ducey was like that, but he had to be talked out of it.
Well, Doug Ducey ran for treasurer first. And before he ran for treasurer, he ran a no on Prop 204 campaign.
But I also heard he wanted to run for governor, and it's like, no, go run for treasurer.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
But I think the point I'm trying to make is that's what he did.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you look throughout Arizona's history, going back, I guess, to Fife would maybe be the only exception. Fife Symington. If you think of like Christine Jones, Will Carden, there are a handful of self-funders that kind of come out of nowhere and think, well, money is the only advantage. And it's just not the case. Arizona voters, we need to know you. We need to have some sort of history with you, which is why I think Carrie Lake, obviously she had the Trump endorsement, and she, I think she's a fantastic communicator. I think even you would agree.
Oh, no, she's great. She's a great communicator.
Just phenomenal. It's just, she had the Trump endorsement. She had 20 whatever years in people's homes. All of that is real. And then you have, somebody that nobody had ever heard of coming and spending all this money. It's a very difficult thing to do. There aren't a lot of examples, certainly not in Arizona, and even around the country, of people that have been able to do that. So she's in a better place today than she was. I think she's learned a whole lot, talking about Karen. But it's also true that, any of the name ID and things, just speaking tactically, a lot of that wanes over time. It goes away. So, just think that you start at the kind of same name ID and faves that you ended the campaign with probably aren't true. So, there's a little bit of catch up to be done. But, she's trying to keep her name out there. She's doing op-eds. She did the state legislative stuff, and she obviously has successes to show. And, I think she's sort of coalesced the donor community around her. So,
that's a big deal.
It's a huge deal.
I mean, it's the campaign that nobody sees. The average voter doesn't see. In something, again, tapping your experience with Ducey, he won his first race the year before it started by locking up donors. I mean, I think Scott Smith was his most credible challenger, and by the time he got in the race, all the donors were locked up, the endorsements were locked up, and that had all been done on the down low outside of the media, outside of the media watching this.
Yeah.
And that's an important detail to kind of remark on too.
Yeah, I mean, running for governor, running a statewide campaign, like a gubernatorial or Senate campaign. I mean, it's to do it well. This is a multi-year process. I mean, for our reelection campaign in 2018, I mean, we essentially started planning for it in Q1 of 2015.
Okay.
I mean, it's all the things that need to be done. I was thinking about positions I needed to hire and people maybe I needed to move from out of states to work on different campaigns and get them experience, and thinking through the different constituencies that we're going to need based on the likely issue sets, and all this stuff takes a lot of time and a lot of planning. And for the most part, most campaigns don't do that. I mean, I think a lot of folks have this kind of Hollywood version of what campaigns are. It's these suits and smoky rooms and piles of money. And at the end of the day, it's just a lot of really just like nuts and bolts, fundamental, like just work.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of stuff you got to do. And putting in the time is really important. You need, particularly, for the governor in 2014, I mean, it was a crowded primary. I don't remember how many people were in it. It was like 10 or 12 people at its height.
Lot of people in that.
It was a lot of people. And Scott Smith was sort of considered the heir apparent, right? I mean, Brewer. So Brewer's team was working on his team, and she ultimately endorsed him. And I think he ended up coming in third, if I remember that right.
I can't remember.
A decade ago.
That's a long time ago.
But Ducey, I think part of that is, back to my point about like, if you want to run for these top jobs, you need to have a long-term view of it. And I think, the model is there for anybody to follow. I think Doug Ducey's model is a fantastic model. The way that he went about it, you could say, well, he was, he really wanted to be governor, but he settled for treasurer. I think the right way to look at it is, he wanted to be treasurer to take time to learn about, state government and meet people and learn the kind of the fundamentals before you just go into it.
And to your point, if he wanted to be governor, he would have had to challenge an incumbent governor.
Correct.
In Brewer. And so I think he was given a coming to Jesus probably moment at some point, like, you don't want to do this, man. Be treasurer, bro.
Yeah, but I mean, like I said, like it's, if you look like objectively and honestly at the Governor Ducey's kind of path, like it is, it's all there for people to follow, I think, and it's just a consistent, really serious and fundamental way that he went about and the team went about doing the things that need to be done in order to make sure that he could be successful. And that's true not only in the fundamentals of building a campaign, but also in governing. I mean, governing is campaigning by different means, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not enough to like send out a press release and hope that, Dennis at Channel 3, reports on it. Like there's so much more stuff, particularly in today's world, where you have to make sure that, you're getting people to talk about what you did and you're informing voters of it. And, all of these different things, there are all of these kind of hard fundamentals you need to do, because you just can't assume that if you do something that people know about it. You've really got to kind of lean in. And I think Ducey did that really well. And I think, Daniel Scarpinato gets a lot of credit for what he did inside the administration to make sure that, a lot of those boxes were being checked.
All right. Well, I could talk to you forever. We're already way over time. That's our little clock right over there.
Sorry. I thought we were in like for 10 minutes. I could keep going.
That's what I thought too, man. Get you in the room. We start talking. It's like, oh my God. But no, I really do appreciate your insight on this, man. And I think, yes, I'm a political hack. Yes, the elections aren't over, but yes, we had to start talking about 2026 because so many people already are talking about 2026.
It's going to be fun to watch, and I'm super happy that I'm not going to be managing any of those races. So I'm happy to exit stage left.
Except possibly Collins.
Well, I mean, he's just got to call me. I mean, like, you know, I'm
be
a
in
little
touch.
expensive these days, but,
I'll
you
see
know,
what I
we'll
can do.
figure it out.
Yeah.
Dennis can probably help me out on
Probably,
part of my nut.
Collins a self-funder.
Good. All right.
I'm just saying.
Well, thanks, man. It's always good to see you.
It's always
good
great to
hang
see
out,
you, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Welcome back to the second half of the Politics Unplugged podcast, and joined by the great producer, Colin Stan. Colin, say hey to the folks.
It's always a pleasure. Good to be here.
So what's your thoughts, man? It seems like everybody, including we established in the first half of this podcast, that even you yourself are thinking about running for governor.
I've been approached. No, it's I am of two minds of it in terms of the Democrats, whether anyone's going to try and primary Hobbs. Everyone seems to agree. Everyone we talked to on the TV show, and JP just agreed, it's an uphill climb, bad idea.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do it. And I just keep thinking back to, if someone primaried Joe Biden, the Democrats probably would have been in a much better spot a few weeks ago on election day than they were.
Yeah.
If you think the candidate's weak, if you think you're going to lose the spot, I don't know that you cling to it. And I don't know how weak she is. I don't know that the two situations are analogous, but I would think this past election for president would indicate that just letting the incumbent stick around because no one thinks it's a good idea to replace the incumbent, I'm not sure that's the approach.
Yeah. And I think Don Thacker made a good point on the TV show. It's like politicians just looking for headlines, looking for attention. And I think there's some of that. There's a lot of bullshit that goes on with this stuff because it is super easy to be out here 2 years out from an election saying, I'm thinking about it. The people want me.
Yes.
There's a lot that goes into that. Are you going to have the money to do that? Do the people really want you? And what is the political environment going to be in 2 years? I mean, over the next 2 years, it could, very much, shift a lot, very much in favor of Katie Hobbs. She will be the Democratic governor.
History certainly suggests that's likely to happen.
Democratic governor, could she be seen as standing up to the Republican president? Things can change and change quickly. And as JP mentioned, I mean, he knows. I mean, the guy's been inside the campaigns for governors. He's worked in the governor's office. He knows the power of that office. And he is right. When the governor calls a press conference, you go out, it's the media, and you cover the fucking press conference.
Yes, every time.
And that's an enormous amount of power,
and
you can change people's perceptions on that.
And if you're someone like Adrian Fontes, who's in a very, very probably strong position as an incumbent as Secretary of State, you probably take a hard look at whether I want to bail on this and run for governor, lose the gig as Secretary of State, potentially just screw up the governor's race, and you're not in a better spot at the end of it.
Yeah, and from what I've seen personally out there, I mean, from Katie Hobbs' own inauguration on, there is a lot of energy in the Democratic Party among the base for people not Katie Hobbs.
Yeah.
There were people that were much more vocal and enthusiastic about Chris May's on Inauguration Day 2 years ago. There's a lot of enthusiasm about Adrian Fontes. And we talk a lot about sports here on this political podcast show.
Yeah.
Why? Because we fucking love sports. And it's our podcast, and you got a problem with it. Like, I'm glad you're not listening. But anyway, to use an analogy is like those two are like the backup quarterbacks.
Yes.
And if you have
everybody always loves
the backup quarterback, man.
Yeah.
Unless his name's Clayton Tune. Everybody loves the backup quarterback, at this point. Because, you're looking at this and you think maybe, she's weak. And maybe she is. And I think, there's a strong case to be made with that. Because you're looking at, other than being the veto queen, what have you done for Arizona? What have you done for your Democratic constituency? And they're probably scratching their heads like those budgets that you signed were pretty Republican friendly.
Yes.
You didn't rein in the ESA program. And yes, I'm harping on that because guess what? She campaigned very much on that.
Yes. And the guardrails that are in place are not much.
Just a bullshit. I mean, anyway, and you're not, and that program ain't going away.
No.
The best you're going to get on that program at this point is like our income caps. That if you make, if you or your family makes above X amount of money, pay your own damn way.
Yes.
That's where that's going to go, because once you start taking programs away from people, that's when shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
So anyway, I would liken, Katie Hobbs is the starting quarterback here for the party, and everybody's looking to those backups right now. It's like, I think they could do better.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Who knows? Yeah. And financially, it's a tough go to take on the incumbent. So
yeah, like that's your struggle. You got to find a funder.
Yeah. And she's been in a tricky spot as governor, in that you're not going to get big wins against a legislature that's completely in Republican control.
No.
And she's not a particularly forceful speaker. She's not going to get out there and give the impression that she's fighting a great fight, but thwarted by the legislature, because that's just sort of not who she is, publicly at least. That's not the image she has.
Yeah. No, unfortunately, in modern politics, I mean, that ability to stand in front of a camera and be an effective communicator, engaging communicator and speaker is important.
Yes.
It's very important.
Yes.
And she's not that.
It's not her strength. No.
Stuff like that. It wasn't a strength of Jan Brewer. And I watched her over her 6 years in the office end up just kind of leaning into it.
Yeah.
And
she
it
got
worked
better
for
at
her.
it.
And it worked for her because it endeared her to people. It made her a little more human.
Yes.
Whether, Hobbs can do that for herself or not, remains to be seen. A lot can happen between now and 2 years from now. A lot's going to happen.
Yeah.
Between now and January 20th, a lot's going to happen. And from January 20th to the end of next year, a whole lot is going to happen.
Yeah.
So we'll have to wait and see on that.
Yes.
But as far as like the Republican primary stuff, Karen Taylor Robson would seem to be in the catbird seat just because she has access to so much money.
Yeah.
But the big question out there is who will end up getting the Trump endorsement, which is worth a lot in that Republican primary.
Yeah. I have a hard time, of the names that are out there, I have a hard time seeing someone other than Robeson doing it. She's a reasonable, she's a candidate that doesn't scare off the non-MAGA people.
Yeah.
MAGA can probably get behind her. I don't know who MAGA is going to get behind. Carrie Lake's a non-starter. I realize everyone is wondering, would she do it again? Come on, man.
And campaigning for... for another 2 years?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, that just sounds exhausting for
It does sound exhausting. After you've already been told twice, man, we don't like you.
Yeah.
I mean, the Red Wave, she lost. She lost to Katie Hobbs, who we're sitting here talking about, are people going to try and primary her because she's a weak candidate? And she's exactly who we elected.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the person we're seeing as governor. That's who she was as a campaigner.
Yeah.
And Lake lost. So the expense, the hassle, for what seems, I would think everyone would look at it and go, man, that is a waste of time. We know what the voters think about her.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine she'd beat Robeson again, even if she has the Trump endorsement and Robeson doesn't. And I don't know that she's getting the Trump endorsement a third time. He tends not to be all that fond of losers.
Yeah.
And she's really solidly established her credentials as a loser at this point. I mean, done it twice.
Oh, man. Well, from that, is there anything else you wanted to bring up? Your political moment of the week, something that really stuck out to you?
Oh, the one thing we've sort of avoided talking about all of Trump's nominations because it's what are you going to say? The one that just struck me as sort of funny is Linda McMahon to education, because Vince McMahon's wife. We're nominating Vince McMahon's wife for a position.
Yeah.
B, if you're Vince McMahon's wife, How happy are you to be nominated to head a department that Trump has vowed to eliminate?
Well, I mean, she could be there to help dismantle it.
Okay.
That's a job too.
Sure.
That's a heavy lift as well.
Yeah.
But like,
okay, just take all that stuff and throw it in the dumpster, buddy.
yeah. I mean, anybody listening, if you got Netflix, there's a Vince McMahon documentary. You should go watch it. It's fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even if you're not into professional wrestling, it's a fascinating documentary.
Yeah. So the nominating the wife of a wrestling mogul so she can be the head of a department that won't exist. Awesome. So again,
Politics.
don't have anything to add on Dr. Oz
or Matt Gaetz. Like,
Yeah.
you kind of saw that one coming. but-
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, what more could we add that hasn't already been added?
yes. I think it points out how easily you could see this coming, that it took them about 45 minutes to nominate his replacement.
Yeah, I mean, if you tuned into this podcast and you're like, I just can't wait to hear what they have to say about Matt Gaetz, I can just go Google it.
I mean, what are you going to say?
Yeah, what else can you say?
Well, yeah.
Hasn't been said.
Yeah. Wherever the standard is for attorney general, we've at least bumped it up so accused sex trafficker is at least a negative.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there you go.
Yeah.
So any big sports takes? I inadvertently said last week that Oregon was on a bye, and they're not. They faced Wisconsin last week. They're on a bye this week.
Yeah, they crushed Wisconsin.
No, that was close. No.
Oh, wait, no, that was close.
It was
You're
close.
Right, you're right.
Yeah, they
you're
came
right.
from behind on that one.
Yeah.
They get Washington next week.
Typical trap game.
Yeah, it kind of was. They were not. They'll bounce back against the Huskies.
No, I was hoping to get, because we're on such a roll of bad sports takes or predictions, I wanted to get your prediction for the Arizona Cardinals to travel up to the great city of Seattle after the weather bomb that dropped over the week that apparently shut down most of the city.
I mean,
have you seen the photos from that stuff?
A little bit, yeah.
Ooh,
It's
brutal.
Yeah. They can deal with rain in Seattle, but you start getting much crazier than your standard rain, and things can get nuts.
Yeah, well, if you've ever been in Seattle, too, it's like the rain is one thing, but it's almost a mist.
Yes.
Just a constant drizzle.
I
It's
mean,
not
I
a
went
real
to school in
heavy
Eugene, Oregon. I spent a year living in Portland, Oregon. The year I spent in Portland, Oregon, there was a 100-day span where it rained 98 days.
Yeah, it's like droplets floating around. It's that kind of a drizzle. It's just
I had like mold growing on the carpet of my car that I couldn't do anything about because it never dried. It was you can't dry it out because it just doesn't. It's never dry.
Wow.
And yeah, Seattle's the same.
Well, so predictions, because I gotta say I'm encouraged by you and your slow turnaround on Kyler Murray.
Yeah,
you were skeptical.
I'm skeptical, and he's played very well.
Yeah, you're still skeptical, but you're turning.
I'm still skeptical, but he's playing very well.
Yeah.
I'm just always skeptical of the small quarterback. It's just I always struggle with
so
that one.
Cute on television.
He's precious, I know. I lean towards Cardinals win. I don't know, tough place to play. I'm not sure what the weather's going to be like. Yada yada.
Yeah.
But they look pretty good, relatively healthy.
Yeah, I see Seattle winning this game.
Okay.
I just do.
Yeah. No, I get it.
I just do. I mean, they said I think their quarterback will have a pretty fantastic day. He's really good from what I've read in what they call the clean pocket, which means if your defense isn't getting any pressure on the quarterback, I don't think this defense hasn't gotten a lot of pressure on a lot of quarterbacks.
No,
I think you'll sit back there, pick them apart. And
Very
it'll be a loss. It'll be a close loss, and I will be sad Sunday evening.
Yeah, the Suns, we can probably just pencil them in for a loss until Durant gets back.
Thank God for this 5-day break.
Yeah, they could use this. They've not been great.
No, is this something to be concerned about? Because you watch a lot of NBA.
I do.
I'd say like that's probably your sport.
I mean, we've got
sport.
League Pass. I'll watch a couple games a night. Yeah. In terms of they're losing, no, I don't think that's necessarily something to be worried about. The fact that we're relatively early in the season, and Durant's out, and Beal is out, and Grayson Allen's been in and out, and that's the problem. Is they've got a bunch of guys who, Durant played a lot of games last year, but if he's going to be out hurt, and Beal has a huge history of health problems. If they're without those guys, they're not going to win.
Yeah.
Particularly Durant. If you don't have Durant, that team is really in a tough spot.
Yeah.
Their bench is better than it was last year, but it's not makeup for Kevin Durant good.
Yeah.
So we'll see. They looked really good before the injuries happened.
Mm-hmm.
If they can get back there and they can stay healthy in the postseason, they'll be fine. My one rant about the NBA.
Oh, we have to talk. This is a 3-pointer?
Yes.
Yeah, because you are very concerned about that. And I think this is kind of a lot. I hear a lot more people talking about this.
Yes.
How the 3-point shot is ruining the game.
They need to do something about the 3-point line.
Mm-hmm.
It's killing the enjoyment of the game for me. Just watching guys play horse is a drag.
Mm-hmm.
I'm tired of watching 3-point shots when an entire offense is built around it. And I get why it is. The math tells you that's the way to do it. But even your most exciting players now are just hanging out the 3-point line. Anthony Edwards, he's taking damn near all of his shots from the 3-point line now. And if he's so fun to watch.
Yeah.
Driving and playing in the lane, and if he's just going to shoot threes now, what are we doing?
Yeah, well, I saw like a highlight of DeAndre Ayton for Portland shooting and tossing up a 3.
Yeah,
like what is going on? Here,
guys? Victor Wembanyama, who is 7'5" and
That's
hell of a
7
post
feet
player.
5 inches.
Yes, is taking shots on average from farther out than Dame Lillard is. It's foolish. It's awful. And we all remember when, the Splash Brothers and the Warriors were revolutionizing the game, and we were all amazed at how many threes they took. 'Cause they were really good at it. But it's like 2016 or so. They were just phenomenal and taking so many threes. And they were taking, I think, 27 threes a game.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just this shock to the system that someone would be that reliant on the 3. Last year, the Celtics are taking 51 a game. That's where we are now. And the Celtics won the title. The Celtics have a lot of talent. The Celtics are winning a lot of games. They're probably the best team in the league. They are unwatchable for me.
Yeah.
I just and there was a point in the last Suns game.
At some point, if you're doing that, like, why not just throw like 5 shooting guards out there?
Yeah.
Because, height at that point doesn't necessarily help you with rebounding.
They're all, the rebounds are all deep rebounds anyway.
Yeah, because they all carry them off the rim. If you miss, like 15 feet. So
Yeah.
boxing out underneath doesn't matter.
Yeah. There was a point in the last Suns game where Nurkic got the ball under the basket. He's standing under the basket. He's got like a smaller guy on him. And all he's doing is frantically looking for someone behind the 3-point line to pass it to.
Mm-hmm.
Like, come on, man. You're standing under the basket. Just take the 2 points.
Yeah.
Please.
But analytics says I shouldn't.
Yeah. and so move the damn line out, eliminate the corner 3, move the arc a few feet back, make it tougher, cut down on these shots. I'm always hesitant to lean on ratings as a meter of how watchable or how good a sport is.
Mm-hmm.
But the ratings, from what I've seen, have not been great early this year.
Well, I mean,
and that's got to be part of it, because the games are just not that fun to watch.
I mean, to your point, I know what you're saying about ratings with sports and stuff like that, but ultimately, it's a TV show.
Yeah.
Football, NFL, most successful TV show. NBA is a TV show.
Yes.
So you gotta pay attention to that.
Yeah.
And you can't be thick-headed like baseball. Don't get me started about how dumb and slow baseball is.
Yeah.
But it took them how long to institute the pitch clock?
Which has been such a huge
Which has been
improvement.
a revolution. For watching those.
Yeah.
Watching that.
I would say I'm watching more baseball now, but that's not entirely true, because I still don't get the games.
I watch a lot more baseball. I mean, I actually, and I really enjoy the D-backs. So watching the D-backs.
See, I can't watch the D-backs. they're not on, I've got YouTube TV and they're not on an over the air because I don't get the Suns on YouTube TV either, but I've got a digital channel to get our station.
Yeah,
so I can switch over and watch.
It's fun. It's like I dig baseball over the long summer, because you can put it on and it's just background.
Yeah,
you go clean your house, read a book, and it's kind of like good background music.
Yeah,
and then you can focus in on things that are exciting and whatnot. Like I dig that. You know.
Have you been to a fall league game?
Love fall league.
Yeah, I went to one a few weeks ago.
Yeah, if you haven't been to a fall league game, you really should rectify that. Go out to. I like going out to Scottsdale, that park out there.
Yeah.
And it's like it's you and a handful of people and a bunch of scouts. And you see the scouts out there with their speed guns and and typing stuff into their phones or into clipboards and stuff.
Yeah.
It's pretty hilarious.
Yeah,
it's great.
When I saw a game at Sloan Park, and I think the crowd was probably a little lighter than usual. I know they don't draw big crowds anyway, but it was on the night of the deciding game of the World Series.
Yeah.
So it was a sparse crowd, and they all had their phones out watching the Dodgers.
But no, it's cool. And like most of those guys out in fall league, I mean, these are the best of the best in the minors. You'll be seeing them very soon in the majors. Yeah. So like if you're into that, or go out there, spend a few hours, buy a couple beers, have a good time. The weather's always great on the weekends. Yeah. Love it.
Yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah, no, and again, like my challenge right now is how does somebody in news try to unplug from the news? Because I just been having a tough time because this election was pretty intense, and I just want to get away from it a lot now. Yeah, on weekends I just kind of like the show says, unplug.
Yeah, no, I've unplugged as much as I can. I'm plugged in enough that I can sit here and talk about stuff politically.
Yeah,
but that's about it. I can't.
Yeah, and like, look, I'm a junkie with this stuff, and I'm tired of all the speculation of how great it's going to be or how bad it's going to be.
Yeah, it's helping me infinitely. That last time around, last presidential election, I was still doing daily newscast, so I had to immerse myself in all the shit. Every time Trump said something stupid, I had to sit there and listen to it.
Just pounding out rundowns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't do that anymore, so I have the luxury of completely ignoring so much of what's going on. And feels pretty good. Yeah,
man. I mean, I am definitely looking forward to the start of the legislative session because it's different. Yeah. Reporting on policy and bills that's introduced and that kind of stuff. That's different.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be nice.
Other than that, anything else?
No, new Father John Misty album drops today, so I'm probably hitting stinkweeds on the way home. Yeah, the new Father John Misty.
Do you have any new shows that could stream that you would recommend? Because again, I watched Stranger Things. I started watching that a few years ago, but just kind of dropped out of it. Right.
Yeah.
For no reason. I enjoyed what I saw back then. It's just I lost touch with it.
No, I'm classic at hearing about a show and watching one or two and going, "This is great." And I never see it again.
Yeah, and I watched it. It was like, man, that was a lot of fun. If you can't take it too serious, a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah,
the '80s references for me were so spot on.
Yes.
We're
solidly.
And I'm from a small town in the Midwest. This took place in a small town in the Midwest. Spot on.
Yeah. No, unfortunately, I'm not your guy for streaming recommendations because I'm seriously this time of year. During the week, I'm watching NBA League Pass, and on the weekends, I've got football on. And for whatever reason, years ago, I just stopped watching scripted TV, and I don't know why. There are all kinds of. I mean, I recognize it's great. I've seen the first 2 episodes of Breaking Bad. It's wonderful. I never went back to it.
Yeah.
The pilot of The Bear is terrific.
Oh,
At some point, I should watch the rest of it because it seems great.
That show is terrific.
Yeah.
Season 3, though, is a little weird.
Okay.
A little experimental.
My favorite show of all time has a season and a half I've never seen. Yeah, this is what I do. I don't get it. But The Wire, I hit season 4 midway through, and it's so fucking bleak. The one in the schools.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Where
yeah,
Prince
yeah, yeah,
Beluski's a teacher, and it's so crushingly depressing, and it's great. But I just hit a point where I stopped watching. So at some point I'll go back and watch.
Well, you're not missing much.
series
Season 5, and this has been of The Wire, is my least favorite.
That's what I always
season
hear.
by a lot. It's still better than a lot of television shows.
Yeah,
but it's just.
I hear it gets kind of stupid and over the top.
It's somebody you get a sense when you know the backstory about what's going on from David Simon, who's the creator of the show and writer of the show, former newspaper guy, Baltimore Sun. You know the backstory about this. There's some score settling going on.
Yeah.
You know,
4 is people have very different views of 4 because I found it just so hard to get through, and there are people who swear it's the best. It's the best season
because it's about the children.
Yeah,
it is. It's a very good. My favorite is actually season 2 with the stevedores.
Workers.
Yeah.
It's everyone loves 1 and 3 because you're dealing. Everyone loves Stringer and all that. And in the projects, which is great. And so I think people hit 2 and kind of went, "Oh, where are the guys for season 1?" But it's really good.
Yeah,
it is really good.
Yeah, it's all great. I mean, that show start to it. I once dated a girl, I encouraged her to watch The Wire, and she said she couldn't watch the first episode because she hated how it started. And I was like, "What?
The first episode of the series?"
Yeah, I'm like, that's amazing.
Snot Boogie.
Snot Boogie.
The death of Snot Boogie,
dude. That is the most amazing.
Yes,
I love that story.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yes,
it's America.
The whole
America, man. Gotta let him play.
Where do you let him play? It's America, man.
Gotta let him play.
And the whole thing about poor kid one day goes out, mom forgets to put his jacket on him. It's cold.
Yeah.
Gets to school. He's got a runny nose. Someone sees that. Snot Boogie for the rest of his life. Yeah.
So wait a minute. Every day, Snot Boogie comes to the crap game, and every time he tries to steal the money, and every time you beat him up, why do you let him play? It's America, man.
It's America, man.
Fucking love that.
Yes. No, so was that the end of the relationship then? Because I didn't like episode 1 of The Wire. That's a deal breaker.
Red flag.
Yeah. That's a problem.
Yeah. So So I'll be searching for that. I did start watching a show on Prime called Fallout. It's based on a video game and a role-playing game. It's been slightly entertaining about a post-nuclear war America in an alternative reality of America.
A side note on all this, one of the things that gets me about modern television is I hear of all these shows that were great and I have to watch them, but they're so scattered on different pay stuff.
Yeah.
That just figuring out where it is, and I just think, God, do you people all really pay for every streaming service? Because I pay for too many. I mean, I've got a ridiculous number of streaming services, and still there's stuff that's on.
Me too.
On stuff I don't have. And here's a great thing. Have you ever seen *Halt and Catch Fire*?
Yeah, no.
It's supposed to be great. Try and track that thing down.
Oh God.
I'm not even sure what it's on now.
I have the Peacock. You know why?
Yeah. Because
there's an
NFL game?
There's an Iowa game on there once a year.
Yes.
And I'm too fucking lazy to go back and cancel my subscription.
They had an NFL game last December, maybe.
Yeah.
That was their big please sign up for Peacock moment. And so I did it. I signed up for Peacock because I looked, and they had a really good deal on a 1-year subscription. And at that point, I knew Oregon was going into the Big Ten, and the Big Ten is on Peacock. And there's been one Oregon game
Why
on
doesn't
Peacock.
the NFL just start its own streaming service?
Well, because then you don't have someone writing the enormous check to the NFL to play the games. I think they'd probably rather not deal with it and have CBS and everyone else write the mammoth check.
Anyway, we're out. If you're still listening, thank you so much for letting us.
We may have set a length record on
I
this
think
podcast.
I think so. And I hear length matters. That said, I don't believe you'll be hearing from us until after Thanksgiving Day.
That's right.
Or as my grandma would say, after Thanksgiving.
Yeah. I believe next week the TV show will be a look back at the year of 2024. And then
Nothing much happened
no
in 2024.
pod. Yeah, we'll see if we have enough to cover.
We'll have to really stretch to come up with some topics.
And a reminder that we're on Blue Sky. Politics Unplugged on Blue Sky. It's like what? politicsunplugged.bsky.social.
Yeah, we like Blue Sky because
it's not Twitter.
Yeah. Twitter and Facebook are just garbage.
Yes. So join us on Blue Sky. We actually post there. We had a page on Twitter that I think had like 5 followers because we refused to post anything because it was Twitter. But we're actually posting stuff on Blue Sky.
You just get a bunch of bots up your ass on Twitter anymore.
So Politics Unplugged at Blue Sky. That's us.
Word. Colin, great seeing you, man.
Good seeing you too. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone.
And I hope you enjoy Thanksgiving too. And go Ducks.
Go Ducks.
Thanks for listening. You can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, the Google Store, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. See you next time.